PowerPoints, power lunches, conference calls, reply to all, endless meetings, constant check-ins, and so much wasted time. Are you sick of the BS? So are we. It's time to take our time back, rework the way we work, and make every call a call to action. This is a podcast for people who want to stop talking and really start connecting. This is After 12. Hi there. Welcome to After 12, our original podcast series following 12for12.com, giving deeper insights on what a marketing geek on the hunt for cool brands does when he's not hunting. And as always, our podcast today is sponsored by Echelon Design, the number one name in exhibits, events, trade shows, or digital media, and messaging strategy, if you want to talk about that. Joining me today is my co-host and co-cheese, Josh Rush. Josh, how are you?
Adam, I am doing wonderful. I am doing very, very much so. Fumbling over my own words because I'm absolutely freaking exhausted. I slept like shit last night. Can you tell? Look at my face.
I can totally tell. It's probably why you're not wearing pants. Well, today, Josh, we're going to be talking about something that will wake you up immediately. We're going to be talking about spirits. And
yes.
The antiquated prohibition era come back to life with the very first episode of 12for12.com. I don't know if you remember it. My performance was shit.
Let's be honest. A little better than okay. So,
but no, it was the first time that we had actually delved into the world of trying to demonstratize, what a brand was or what marketing to support branding means, and we did it around the corner from my house. A small but now very blossoming spirits company called Few Spirits in Evanston, Illinois. Tell us a little bit about Few, Josh.
Going back to, it's been a couple years now, but Paul Hletko, who is an Evanstonian as well, was a lawyer for many years, and I guess Adam, was it his profession that led him to either the pursuit of overturning prohibition in Evanston, or was it his love of craft spirits and bourbon that led him to overturn?
There's a lot to unpack in that question. So yes, Paul, I don't know if, you can either pronounce his name with the H, Hletko, or Letko. I don't know if the H is silent.
It's a
but
silent
yeah,
H,
Paul, in 2011, started Few Spirits in Evanston, which was a really kind of great place to start for a number of reasons. One is that Paul was an attorney, and I think he was getting fatigued with the day-to-day trials and tribulations of corporate law. He had been brewing beer in his home for a while, and he has a connection. His, I think, grandfather was one of the original owners of Pilsner Urquell in Czechoslovakia, which is now the Czech Republic. And his father was, the only one of his family that survived the camps and came out of Nazi-occupied Europe.
Which is just crazy.
Yeah, which is crazy. And it distilled in Paul a lifelong love of the process of creating spirits and beer. And so in 2011, he took a huge leap of faith, a major risk, and started Few. Now, the other thing that's really curious about Few is Few, just maybe coincidentally, I don't know, he's very tongue-in-cheek about this, but Few is the initials of Frances Elizabeth Willard. Now, historically, Frances Elizabeth Willard is very, very famous for starting the Women's Christian Temperance Union, which really spearheaded prohibition across the country. So here we have a very craft spirits company based in the same town that was against all alcohol sales. And alcohol actually didn't even become legal in Evanston until 1972, I believe. So before we get into the taste profile, one of the things that I think was so ingenious with Paul and what he had concepted, more than just the Frances Elizabeth Willard, the name Few connotes a small batch, have a few. It's kind of got this old timey typeset. It's very simple. And then all of the images on their labels are set to reflect mid to late 1800s, the World Fair that came through Chicago. And it's truly a Chicago brand. And when you look at the bottle, you can tell, okay, this came from kind of this Prohibition era, recipe or idea, which is like super hip now. I mean, it's the whole reason Josh grew out a beard, got
It's the only reason.
tattoos. He got his both nipples pierced, and as well as the hood. But it's really capitalizing on that vibe. So the other thing that I really love about Few, more so than just the bottle, is the story. Entrepreneurialism meets temperance. The idea that it was once a dry city is now home to a craft distiller who is selling his whiskeys, ryes, gins, white whiskeys across 5 continents, over 30 countries. So that's pretty impressive.
Well, I mean, and just I guess the craft kind of spirit market as a whole has just been growing like crazy. Paralleling the rise of depression is the rise in consumption of spirits. American beer sales, like traditional beer sales, are down. Spirits are rising against those. Craft spirits and craft beers rising against those. And I was doing a little bit of research before this podcast because last time we really didn't research this very well. But I found that it said, let's see. So in 2017, so this is not last year's numbers yet, but in 2017. Craft distilling industry sold nearly 7.2 million cases, which was a 23, almost 24% jump year over year, which is pretty incredible. And so I have to imagine too, we talked to Paul about this when we were with him, that this is a tough market to break into. Now, while it's a healthy, robust, booming market, this is not an easy space to play. I mean, most small businesses, most distilleries don't last more than a year. And so Paul's now been around since 2011, and you find his bottles distributed, anywhere in the world. I mean, we've been on location where?
In France, we went to Maison du Whisky, and we saw his. He had a whole end cap at Maison du Whisky, which is one of like Paris's kind of top spirits boutiques, and I was pretty impressed. I've seen him on the shelf in Denmark, in Copenhagen, in Brussels, in Belgium.
You guys saw him in Tokyo when we were in Tokyo last year, right?
We saw him in Tokyo. So I mean, the fact that there is a global market for this type of real old world look and feel, and we haven't even started talking about the taste. So
I think that's a great.
That's a good idea. I mean, the other thing that makes Few so exceptional is, like, for instance, the bourbon is a spicier bourbon. I think Few started kind of in an interesting path. The first thing that they really worked on were the gin, which is gin and white whiskey, which are gin is probably the easiest to distill, hardest to get right. White whiskey is probably on the easier side of whiskeys. But they started with that and kind of started really experimenting. And because it was so small batch, because it was a few, they had a very grassroots local group of people supporting them. Paul, like myself, is married to a physician. I think she probably helped a lot. And then he got, I think he got...
You live a charmed life.
Yeah. Then he got a local investment, and more people got interested. I know it was like 3 or 4 years ago. I think it was after the time, or maybe right around the time that we shot there. They had been, like, a percentage of the company had been acquired. So, I mean, he's business-wise is doing great.
I think, as we look at some of the lessons or the takeaways from this episode and our time with Paul is that idea of, he's clearly channeling a feeling of nostalgia, right? So, tapping the Columbian Exposition, and working that into the labeling,
and working that story into
bottles.
Everything too. I mean, a story about a hometown guy born and raised in Evanston, or at least lives in Evanston. I don't know if he was born there, but I think he's a Chicagoan. Lives in Evanston. Wanted to have his distillery in the town that he lived. Loved the kind of the transference of the story of Frances Elizabeth Willard. Loved the Temperance thing, and then really tapped. You mentioned the White City, but the whole Devil in the White City, the Eric Larson book. That talked about the Columbian Exposition and the World's Fair.
Yes.
So he's got all of that going on in the bottle. So before you even take the bottle off the shelf to uncap it, uncork it, and taste it, you're intrigued.
And the tone of the brand, is definitely, it's all aligned as well. This is on the back of the bottle, so you can't see this, but I'll read it. It says, when describing the rye on the label, it reads, "Bear witness to the revival of rye. Born of hearty grain, and our generous rye content is married with the sweetness of corn for a genteel interpretation of the venerable spirit."
Even the copy.
So, I mean, even the copywriting, yeah. I mean, he's done a wonderful job tapping into that period of time.
When we asked him what the brand meant to him, he said to us, people really want to be part of something, and with few spirits, people can be part of the brand. So it's sharing, sitting down with friends, sharing a story, sharing a drink together, and having that be a catalyst to good experiences and good memories. So I poured myself a little.
I think we should definitely toast to that.
Toast to that.
I think. So I will do a little taste test, but then I don't know if it's appropriate or not, because I did bring all the fixings for our favorite whiskey drink.
Some Gosling ginger beer, folks.
Ginger.
Luxardo cherries.
Maraschino cherry.
Yeah.
Luxardos.
Creamy Luxardos.
And, of course, bitters. These aren't the best, but they'll do. So I don't know. I'm gonna have a little sip, and let's try this out, and then we'll share with the audience our experience right now. I'll have a few with you. Oh. Our producers, well, Dylan's there with you, but Adrian is sick as a dog. He should have some of this. To you, Adrian.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys. Are you drinking do you have the bourbon? Oh, the rye is really good. Wow, that is, it's better than I remember. I guess for me with few, I've always had this feeling that it's kind of like really mashy. It's almost like the alcohol is a little overwhelming at times, but the rye is really sweet.
Yeah, I mean that like one of the things about intro distiller kind of syndrome is that you're learning how to make the right batch. A lot of the times it can be very tailsy, it can be ethanol heavy on the back end. Your mouthfeel can be strong. Right. It can be, really acidic. But with this, I mean, I think, I saw him drinking the bourbon, you're drinking the rye. I think, with the bourbon, it's a spicier bourbon. I think it's 70% corn. And then, it's like 5% mash, but it's, I don't know, I have to look at the ingredients, but it's spicier. So I don't know with how's the rye? I haven't had the rye in a while.
The rye's smooth. I mean, there is, I would say there's definitely a smokiness that's there. It's not overbearing. It's really tasty. Because I've been drinking a lot of the, which ryes have I been drinking? I like the Woodford rye. And then obviously like a Templeton, they make a great rye, or Angel's Envy. With the Angel's Envy is really really smoky. Have you had their Just Rye? The Just Rye. Oh man, but this is good. I'm digging on this. We do have a few salient points that we wanted to drive home today. Master storytelling, ensure authenticity. Obviously, he's lived, bled, and sweat and cried, I'm sure, his way through the success of this brand and growing this business. But he's not like trying to tap some hipster cool, movement. He might grow a big beard because he's just a gruff kind of dude, but he is, I would say, has remained very authentic, and the brand is consistent. I mean, that he doesn't mess with it. Every time you see, even when they're introducing like their really bespoke, special, small batch releases, there's always a thoughtfulness to how the recipe was kind of concocted and what they were aiming to do and what feeling they were trying to evoke, and and I would say too, just that idea of, again, what they're doing, tapping nostalgia. And I wanted to bring up an example because I was in San Diego this past weekend, and I wound up meeting the creative director for the Padres. So Brendan Nieto, if you're watching, big shout out to you, man. Thanks for the tour. But talking to Brendan at the Padres, they have a brand that is, he would say, kind of all over the place, right? MLB is very lax in how it views branding, whereas like the NFL is super locked down. Like they've got really tight rules, really restricted what you can do. So, as a brand guy, you've got a really defined box, and you just build up that brand, and there's that consistency. It's almost Coca-Cola like, right? So you don't mess with it. Whereas San Diego, they've changed their logo several times, and they've got, you can see, well, they've added this like little hook on the end of the S and the D, but it does have like a little tail and many other logos. And it's like walking through the store with Brendan the other day, and I bought a bunch of gear for my kids and my niece and nephew. You could see like clearly the visual identity was kind of all over the place, and it drove him absolutely nuts. But they had just gone in, I guess, just completed some focus groups, meeting with fans, and they have decided to roll back the brand to the 70s style, so that they're going brown, and this yellow is going to be their color palette going forward, and they're actually going to bring pinstripes back. And it was that the same logic that applied. People have that connection to a time and place, whether it was their dads or their grandparents baseball team. They wanted to roll back. They like that idea of
past is the present now. I mean, that's how you get fans of something that, I mean, if it resonates with that thought you had when you were a kid and you went and saw the Padres play, that experience.
Well, you tap all those stories, and he showed me a piece they just put together too, and it was he went on Amazon and bought like this like 70s era, box TV, it was like a tube style with the antenna, the rabbit ears, and they filmed a whole piece where they were nesting compositions of old games and great moments in Padre lore. And it was really well done. And I thought, again, they're tapping that idea that, like you say, what's past is now, or what's old is new. And, and it becomes a brand that you associate with. So of course I bought this one because I, too, like,
you didn't ask it
the colors really
as a gift. You didn't say, can I have one of these hats?
Well, he gave me 40% off with the employee discount. So
there it is.
I only spent like $250.
Well, so in addition to capitalizing on kind of that emotional connection to the past, the thing that I find interesting about Paul is because he is the owner. He used to be the master distiller. Now he's got a master distiller and distillery manager that works for him. But he's got the ability to create white label bottles of something. For instance, and maybe we can throw up an image of this, the Brainville rye that was created for the band The Flaming Lips. Now, we've seen the similar kind of thing with white labeling a great product with, for instance, Stern Pinball. Stern Pinball, they kind of resurrected from the death of analog games with licensing, but then they actually monetized pinball sales to consumers and to, well, not just consumers, but businesses, B2B sales through white labeled games. What I love about these entrepreneurs like Paul Hletko is that they, again, you can be unapologetically yourself and own what you do and work your ass off.
Paul is unapologetic. You could tell that with his approach and trying to, really pay honor to a distinct moment in time. It wasn't like, oh, that's a great marketing idea. It just was a great idea.
Well, I mean,
and
maybe this is a follow-up question for Paul, but when he was first conceiving the notion, it probably came from the making of the spirit. But I mean, he must have thought, oh, I live in Evanston. This is the home of Frances Elizabeth Willard. In fact, like the Frances Elizabeth Willard house is right downtown. So you can go visit where, the
right.
the Women's Christian Temperance Union started. So, I mean, he must have had that in his mind, because in terms of branding that sticks, to me, that's genius. And to me, a lot of people, like when we travel overseas, a lot of people know Chicago in reference to, Capone and, the mob days. And, so
the Roaring 20s.
And then the last thing, again, I feel like with any company, be it on the employee side or on the product side, it's really all about the people, finding something that connects your consumers with your brand and with each other. So, this is.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's creating that evangelizing, consumers so that they will tell your story for you. And I mean, that's how I came to know Few, was through the show, through you. Obviously your connection to Evanston and through that, Paul, becomes this referral. And now, there was a time around the production where it seemed like we were all kind of buying, a bottle of Few for Christmas. That was the go-to gift for, especially with our peers or colleagues. So, and that only happens when you involve people in your story, which is great. So for, again, a large majority of our clients who are not in the business of, making whiskey or, even have a consumer brand to market, I still think there's a ton that you could take away from this episode. And if nothing else, have a drink. And
for all you listening, check out more at fewspirits.com. That's After 12 for us today. I hope you had a good time. And remember, drink responsibly, but drink nostalgically.
Cheers.
Cheers, man.